This is the Mobius X8 Wrist Brace.
Blue, you're my boy!
I broke my wrist about 5 months ago and I decided I really wanted a brace to help me get back out on the trails. I researched quite a few of them and this came up as being the best over and over and over again. This thing is not cheap. I got mine on sale, but I think it retails for close to 250 Canadian. I'm not sure what you can find it for in the US. I'll post a couple links down below, but yeah, it's an expensive brace. But with how often I'm out on the trails and how important my health is for me and how often I get injured, I was okay paying the money if it even had a chance at being effective. Okay, so let's take a look at this thing and then I'm gonna go up on the trails and do a back-to-back and I'll talk about how it feels. So the brace isn't super hard to put on. Sometimes you have to faff around a little bit. Basically, you slide it over your finger like this. Once you have it on your finger, there's a boa-like dial to tighten it up. The part I find the most faffing around up on the trail is actually getting this little Velcro strap on here. It kind of just slides in. On the trails, that sometimes can be a little bit of a pain in the ass. So once you get that all nice and tight, there you have it, it's on. So this wrist brace goes on either hand. I'm riding mine on my right where my injury is, but if I wanted to, I could flip it over to the left. So the other nice thing about this brace is you can actually slip a glove over it and it feels pretty comfortable. So as far as how much the brace constricts movement, it does stop a little bit of forward bending, not a ton, but a little bit. Like I can feel a little bit of support there. So that might help over a day's riding, maybe just stop a little bit of fatigue. I don't know. I actually don't know if that does much. As far as side to side motions go, for me and my injury, it's kind of nice. It doesn't really stop a lot of that side to side motion, maybe a little bit, but not a lot. The place where it really does seem to help out is on hyperextension. And I think that's what it was going for. It really stops that wrist from bending back. There is a setting where you can change that adjustment. So there's a little Allen key where you can change how much back motion you have. I played around with it a little bit. For where my injury's at, having a little bit of play is okay. And it's just enough so when I'm riding that it doesn't really hinder the performance of the ride. In general, it's pretty comfortable. It doesn't feel too cumbersome. I've had kind of some of the cheaper classic kind of braces on and it really feels bulky and kind of clunky. You can feel this thing's on, but there's enough motion, especially in the planes of motion when you're mountain biking, that it feels pretty natural. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna head up to my local trail and I'm gonna do a back-to-back run. My first run, I won't use the brace and I'll just get a sense of how everything's feeling. On my second run, I'll run with the brace and I'll put on the camera and I'll just comment on how it feels.
Okay, first thing I notice is on the climbs, I have a harder time using my thumb to gear up. So if I want to tuck under to gear up, I mean, it's that part of it that blocks the hyperextension. Just, I have to fight it to get it. So I find myself using my finger and coming up over to gear up. So usually I'd be wearing a glove over this brace. It does fit, which is nice. I like wearing gloves in case I eat shit. I just took a run without a brace. My wrist felt pretty good. I definitely feel that it's a brace, like it's constricting movement a bit. There's a little bit, I guess on the downside is my hand's fighting the brace a little and you can kind of feel the fatigue of that. Kind of like my arm or my wrist gets like, not sore, but fatigued a little. On that corner, I could feel my hand wanting to hyperextend and I could really feel it supporting it there, which is probably good. I mean, I imagine if I hit something more jarring is where I would really notice it. You know, I don't know if I had like a huge crash, how much it would protect it. I mean, I guess on hyperextension it certainly would, because it definitely blocks that. Side to side motion for this kind of riding, I don't really notice any difference. As a hack like me, I don't really notice it affecting the ride. So it's not impeding performance or anything. Yeah, it's weird. It's like, it's more fatiguing, but at the same time, it is helping me avoid getting my wrist into the position where I think it becomes vulnerable. That kind of deep hyperextension, it kind of would protect me from going there on a big hit. It's like safer, but more fatiguing at the same time, if that makes sense.
So yeah, as you can see, the brace didn't hinder any performance for someone riding at my level, which is nice. You could tell the brace was on, and as I commented, it almost felt a little bit fatiguing, and I think that was me just trying to really play with how much movement I had. I'm not sure if I just went out there and I wasn't thinking about it, if I'd really noticed it all that much, but what I did notice, and what I think is really what's happening, is it stops my wrist from going into a place where it would be vulnerable. So if I was kind of going with a little bit of speed, even on the berms with just that little bit of G-force, I could really feel the brace kind of activating almost and kind of holding my wrist into place. The other one I think that it does is, stop you from getting into a vulnerable position is if I had a big hit and I was really kind of pounded in there, if it would kind of just stop my wrist enough from snapping back. And I don't think, like, if I went over the bars and I did like a full hand out, I'm not sure how much it would help or not help. I actually talked to my physiotherapist about it, and she didn't think it would do a ton if I had a really big crash. She actually gave the brace a thumbs up. I took it in and we kind of went over it. She just thought it would kind of support my wrist a little bit when I got into those more G-force places, like on berms or landing on a jump. From what I can understand, this wrist brace has really been inspired by the moto community. I think a lot of those guys will ride it just to prevent kind of repetitive injuries and the repetitive stress that you get on a moto. I don't know if that's necessarily necessary for mountain biking, maybe on big days on Whistler. And I'm actually a little bit curious to try this out on Whistler when I'm out for, hours on end, if it does stop any fatigue from setting in, just from kind of repetitive poundings, brake bumps, all the things you find at Whistler. So overall, like, do I think it's worth the price? I mean, it's really expensive. I think if you're just looking for something of like, maybe I'll try something that, I have a little bit of sore wrist action going on, I don't know if this is the wrist guard for you. It's really expensive. Welcome to mountain biking. But if you're in a position where you really want to get back out on the trail and you just want to make sure you have the most protection you can get, this might be worth it. It'll be really interesting to see how much I end up using it. I think until I get my confidence back, it gives me just a little bit of peace of mind that I have a little bit of extra protection of stopping my wrist get into a vulnerable position. I know I keep saying that over and over again, but that is kind of my big worry. But on a daily ride, if I hit a section that's a little bit tougher or with a little bit too much speed, or sometimes your mind's just a little out of it and you're not in the perfect position when you're, on a feature or on a corner, I actually think it will kind of protect the wrist a little bit. So, to really sum things up, I'm really glad I have it. It's really expensive. I think it's really good, and I don't think it's for everybody. But if you're looking for something top end and you really have some wrists that need protection, I think this is a really good option. I don't know, what do you think? Let's go get a coffee. Screw coffee, let's go get a beer.